Ever since I was a child and went to see Disney movies, I always had an ambition to be in a Disney movie. And so when I got the call from Walt to do this movie, I about fell down because this is what I've dreamed of doing.
I know that I am blessed and unbelievably lucky to have been asked to do this film at a time in my life when the next break was just a big question mark, and suddenly there was Mary Poppins and Walt.
I was so lucky to be able to call Walt Uncle Walt. He was fantastic in my life. Those are my fondest memories.
For me, there was always a touch of magic to do with Walt.
When he walked into a room, it was electric. You were breaking your neck to do better than you ever dreamed you could do. That's the way you felt, and it was great.
Whenever you come up with a great idea, you make it greater.
While I can't really say it feels like only yesterday, I can, in all honesty, say that it certainly doesn't feel like 40 years since Walt Disney's Mary Poppins had its world premiere in August 1964. Hello, I'm Dick Van Dyke, and that really is me in that picture with Julie Andrews. I think all would agree that Mary Poppins truly is Walt Disney's crowning glory, the culmination of over 3 decades of work and experience as a master storyteller and an innovator in the world of entertainment. Like Mary Poppins herself, the film is practically perfect in every way. The perfect creative team, perfect songwriters, the perfect cast, and the perfect person to put it all together, Walt Disney. But getting started wasn't that easy.
Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go.
There are lots of reasons why Mary Poppins is a special film. And one of them, I think, is because Walt Disney, with this film, perhaps more than any other in his career, poured so much of himself into it. He was determined to make it. For no less than 20 years he struggled to get the rights to this story.
The best Disney movies are the ones that show Walt's involvement in. I remember him being interviewed for it, and he said that his daughter, Diane, had read the books, and she actually was the one who said, "Dad, maybe there is something for you here." And he loved the books too. So it was something very personal to him from the start.
P.L. Travers' Mary Poppins was published in 1934 in London, but it wasn't until about 4 years afterwards, in 1938, that Walt Disney went after the rights.
Mrs. Travers, however, wasn't too keen. Allegedly, she said she'd seen other books that had been turned into movies, and she didn't like the way they'd been treated by Hollywood. But Walt never, ever gave up on a good idea. And in 1944, he tried again.
Walt sent his brother to try and convince Pamela, who was in New York, that she would release the rights to him, but she wouldn't.
Now, over the next few years, there are several offers made and as many refusals. In 1959, Walt Disney was going to London to see after one of his film productions that was going on over there, and he decided to try and call and see Mrs. Travers and see whether his personal charm could win things over. P.L. Travers said that talking to Walt was like talking to a friendly, charming uncle who took from his pocket a gold pocket watch and dangled it enticingly before your eyes. That meeting clinched things. Walt Disney finally got the rights to Mary Poppins.
If you want this choice position, have a cheer.
My brother Robert and I started working for Walt Disney back in 1960. We came to his office one day and he says, "I want you to read something." And he reached behind him and he had this book. And he handed it to us, The Stories of Mary Poppins by Pamela Travers. So he said, "Okay, Walt, we'll take it and read it." And so we came in and we handed him 6 chapters and we had underlined them in crayon. And he chuckled, reached into his desk, pulled out his book.
The same chapters were underlined in his book. And we thought we were really in it. That worked.
And he said, "You fellas like to work?" And we said, "Oh, yeah, we love to work." He says, "You like to work for me?" He said, "Oh, yes, we'd love to work for you, Mr. Disney."
At that time, the studio lot was almost totally different than any other studio. It was almost like a campus. One of Walt's wonderful talents was being able to select talent and then keep them upbeat and contributing.
He knew a lot about all of us. He'd go around at night and see what people were doing.
If he thought you had talent, he would
come and check on what you were doing when you weren't there. Walt Disney was the most marvelous man I'd ever worked for.
Take a look!
When we read the Mary Poppins books, we were so impressed with the characters and the stories. They were wonderful, but there was no storyline. It was a series of adventures. Mary Poppins flies in for no apparent reason and flies away again at the end, and they have these wonderful adventures. And certain things that stood out as being absolutely wonderful. And we wove them into a kind of a story.
They're off. It's Mary Poppins leading by 2 lengths, China second by a length, Michael third, and there goes
We were working with a brilliant artist-writer, Don DeGrati. He could visualize exactly what you were talking about, and you'd see it come to life on paper with just a charcoal sketch. He was just remarkable. Bob and I would write a song, something to show the flavor of it. Don would sketch the thing, and then Walt would come in. He'd say, what you got? And like every couple of weeks, he'd come in, and we'd spend an hour or so, and he'd be rolling up his sleeves and just totally concentrated on what we were doing. And one day, about 2.5 years later, Walt said, you know, we have to have the author come over here and listen to what you guys have come up with.
Walt suggested to Pamela that she go out to California and work with the Shermans on the script.
After we had written the whole thing.
You may come in one at a time.
Thank you.
Bob and I were totally unaware of the fact that Walt only had an option on the property. We, for 2.5 years, labored, totally unaware of the fact that Mrs. Pamela Travers ultimately would say whether we could do this or not. And at that point, Walt said, I'm going to put Bill Walsh on this, too. He was the head writer and co-producer of much of Walt Disney's product at that time, and a brilliant writer. And so by the time Mrs. Travers came over, we were very confident that she was going to be bowled over, but she wasn't.
She didn't like anything we wrote.
And these conversations they had are all recorded.
Now we come to my notes here, my typewritten notes, and this is what I want to make very clear. The book should be read very carefully for atmosphere. It is integral to the book and to the story that Mary Poppins should never be impolite to anybody.
You brought your references, I presume. May I see them?
Oh, I make it a point never to give references. A very old-fashioned idea to my mind.
Is that so?
P.L. Travers was a mass of contradictions. She was deeply frustrating as a person.
She was a pretty crisp lady in many ways.
Now, I want this tape measure to be used as I put it here.
Just as I thought. Extremely stubborn and suspicious.
Because it was a tape measure that my mother had when she was a little girl, and I think it would be very nice. No, don't make it like that.
There were so many hesitations in her acceptance of the idea that the father and mother change and become warmer and more loving. She said,
Not a change of heart, because he's always been sweet, but worried with the cares of life.
The children, madam, to be precise, are not here. They've disappeared again.
we wanted the story to have a need for Mary Poppins to come. And this need was the fact the parents were so busy doing their own thing, they weren't paying enough attention to their children. And that would be the key to the story.
Mary Poppins taught us the most wonderful words. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
What on earth are you talking about?
The magical quality of Poppins' life and her main thrust, her reason for being in our lives, is that she fixes things. She goes in and makes families better.
Father, we're sorry about the tuppence. We didn't know it would cause you so much trouble. Here, Father, you can have the tuppence.
I think she had 30 days to consider. On the 30th day, she relented, but she had to be the consultant.
It seems unbelievable after all that had gone on, but almost 20 years from the point when Walt Disney had set out on this quest, Mrs. Travers agrees on certain conditions that the film might be made.
Walt Disney had a gift for finding talented people and bringing out the best in them. I know he saw something in me that I might not have seen in myself. He certainly saw that something in Julie Andrews. He inspired each member of the cast and crew to a level of excellence that can be seen in every frame of that film. And did we have fun making it?
We were considering a number of people to play the part of Mary Poppins. We had of Mary Martin, and we were thinking of Betty Davis, and then we were also thinking of Angela Lansbury. But it wasn't until one evening when the Ed Sullivan Show had an excerpt from Camelot, and a young woman named Julie Andrews and Richard Burton sang "What Do the Simple Folk Do?" And I called my brother. I said, "Bob, oh my God, she's absolutely perfect." Next day we walked into DeGratti's office, and Don DeGratti says, "Did you see the Ed Sullivan Show last night?" I mean, it was just wow. So we walked down the hall, the three of us, we want to see Walt.
How did you pick Julie for the part?
Well, I went to New York and I caught the performance of Camelot. And then I went backstage and I tried to convince her I was capable of making a picture with live actors as well as cartoons. I didn't know what she thought of me and everything.
He was very funny, had a lovely sense of humor, and he was very demonstrative. He started acting out the whole of the script of Mary Poppins right there in that small little room. And I was married to Tony Walton, and after he'd said that he'd enjoyed the show and would I like to come to Los Angeles to see the storyboarding and hear the songs, and Walt turned to Tony and he said, "And what do you do, young man?" And Tony explained that he was a designer of sets and costumes, and he said, "Well, bring your portfolio with you."
At the time, it was still just on the cards that Julie might do the film version of My Fair Lady.
That's the film she wants to make, My Fair Lady. The role, Eliza Doolittle, that she had played in London and on Broadway to great critical acclaim. The fact of the matter is that Julie Andrews was not a big name, not in terms of cinema, and Jack Warner thought it was a risky business, so he chose the beautiful Audrey Hepburn.
The press had made such a big deal out of it, and although I knew why I didn't do My Fair Lady, and sure, I was, sad about it, but I completely understood why I wasn't chosen to do it. Audrey did such a beautiful job, and she later became such a great, great friend.
And so Julie did Mary Poppins, because they both were filmed at the same time. It was like fate.
She was Mary Poppins.
P.L. Travers had approval, pretty much, of everything in her contract, so Walt said that Julie would need to be auditioned or passed by the author of the stories.
I met her very briefly in London. She, I think, was fond of me and approved of my doing Poppins. I know she said that I had the nose for it.
As I expected, Mary Poppins practically perfect in every way.
She was quite happy with Julie Andrews, though. She was more than happy. She loved her performance.
Room for everyone, gather around. The constable's responsible. Now how does that sound?
Walt Disney was reading in a newspaper an article about what people thought about the cinema today, and he came across a comment by Dick Van Dyke which said that he personally did not like the way in which modern-day movies were trending towards, as he put it, dirty pictures. Now, this was something that Walt himself felt very, very strongly about, and he thought, oh, this man's a man after my own heart. So he had a look at some of Dick's work, and he asked Dick to come over to the studio. They met. Instantly, they liked one another, and almost instantly, Walt was offering him the part to play Bert.
Can't put me finger on what lies in store, but I feel what's to happen. All happened before.
There was a lot of Bert in me and a lot of me in Bert, I'm afraid, because I never grew up personally.
We'd both seen Dick in Bye Bye Birdie, and of course had been religious viewers of his TV series, so that was very exciting.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. I does what I likes, and I likes what I do.
I was trying my best to do a Cockney, and sometimes I notice in the film I almost get it. In other scenes, it isn't there at all.
I know the very person you mean. Mary Poppins.
There was a British magazine that came out last fall, which named me as one of the top 20 worst dialecticians in the history of movies.
A spoonful of sugar goes a long, long way.
It certainly had its own particular charm.
Well, I have to be moving along there. Lord Mayor's got a stopped-up chimney.
Chimney.
But it's amazing how the British forgave me for my bad accent.
Dick, of course, was just outrageous. My first impression of him was wow, I get to do this for 9 months. This is awesome.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim cheree.
He was just the funniest, silliest pratfall guy, falling over all the time, always pretending he was injured, and just having Matthew and I in hysterics. He was so much fun.
I'd only been in one movie myself, so I was about as green as anything. And Julie, despite the fact it was her first film, was perfectly professional. She had a camera personality. She knew where the camera was. She knew where the lights were, as if she had done it all her life. She was thoroughly professional from the beginning.
Karen Detrice and Matthew Garber, who played Jane and Michael, the children in Mary Poppins, had already made an earlier film of Walt Disney's called The 3 Lives of Thomasina. These two charming, delightful young people provided a wonderful centre for the film.
I think the one thing that comes off with Disney movies of the old days, and especially Walt himself, was his love of innocence. And I think that's what Walt revered in We Children, and that's what he wanted to send us away with still, and he succeeded. After Mary Poppins and after the No Mobiles, Matthew and I had made the 3 films together, and we really didn't stay in touch. I remember his mum, Margot, calling to let us know that Matthew had died. That was so unexpected and very sad. And then, of course, with anybody's death comes regret and sorrow. I wished I had picked up the phone over the years. I wished I had treated him more like a brother, but he's indelibly printed in all of our minds. He's eternal from those pictures, and Mary Poppins especially. And what a cute little boy, an amazing little soul.
When we were casting the film, Walt immediately said, I know the perfect person to play the mother, and that is Glynis Johns. She's just absolutely right. And we all agreed, she's absolutely perfect.
Gracious, Kate and Anna, you're not leaving. What will Mr. Banks say? He's going to be cross enough as it is to come home and find the children missing.
So we had the casting people call her to come in and have lunch with the group of us who were doing the film. And Glynis was told, Walt wants to talk to you about Mary Poppins. And so I'm sure she just was convinced that she was going to be the character of Mary Poppins. In the course of conversation, it came up that, well, we've already signed Julie Andrews. She's going to play the lead.
I said to Walt, it might give me an incentive if I could have my own little number.
Walt reached over and said, but Glynis, the boys are just finishing a great number for you. You're going to love it. Wait till you hear it. So he says, all right. I'll have to hear it, and if I like it, then I might consider doing the part. So she left. Walt said, get on this thing. You got to write something for her. Well, we had this song that we had written called Practically Perfect. So we said, that could be a suffragette song.
By the time I got back to the Chateau Marmont, the telephone was ringing, and it was Walt. He said, listen to this. I heard the first few bars of Sister Suffragette.
We're clearly soldiers in petticoats.
Glynis was interested then.
When I think now of how nearly I didn't do it, it's amazing because I'm so proud to be part of it.
It's grand to be an Englishman in 1910.
Bill Walsh had seen David Tomlinson in several English films, and we sent for them. And Walt and Bob and I and Stevenson and DeGrady, we all sat down and watched these films. And Walt said, very good, let's see if we can get him. And that's how it was. It was simple as that. We just knew he had the right personality.
Thank you, most interesting. And I think we've had quite enough of this nonsense.
Edwin was, again, Walt Disney's inspiration. Walt always wanted to have Edwin in something. He was, in Absent-Minded Professor, he was the fire chief. He'd come in and do things. And he was in Babes in Toyland. He was the toy maker. He just loved Edwin, and everybody did.
I'm having such a good time. I wish that you could all stay up here all the time.
Working with Ed, who had that wonderful way of laughing, and that lisp of him always made me laugh.
We love to laugh. So everybody can hear.
The kids, at some point, after so many takes, would have a very difficult time getting a laugh up and keep that energy up. But Julie and Ed and I thoroughly enjoyed ourselves.
The flying sequences were fantastic. Every day we went to work, we seemed to be up in the air, even if it was only a couple of feet off the ground. It was terrific.
Matthew Garber, who played Michael, was afraid of heights and did not like being hung around on wires all day. But somebody offered him a dime every time he went up on the wires, and he made an absolute fortune.
He got extra money for that. Every time he did a take, he got paid another dime. It was quite a going concern. I was bigger on lemonade stands on the weekend myself.
It was, hard work. It was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of standing and waiting for the lighting, and and Matthew would get fidgety and bite me on the leg once in a while.
I love that.
Matthew, stop up. He just didn't know what to do with himself. There was one time when they needed him to laugh. They wanted him to laugh on camera.
Right.
And he wouldn't laugh. They said, Dick, go behind the camera and make him laugh. And he was determined he was not going to laugh.
Really?
And I made every face and fell down. I did everything I could think of, and he would not laugh.
Oh my God.
He just decided not to.
He knew his power, that kid.
Walt himself came up with the technical approach to achieve the fact that once they were all laughing, they're all floating about in the air. So every shot had to be treated in a different way. So that if for one split second you thought, oh, they must have been on wires there, then the next shot would be done in such a way that they were actually sitting on the end of a teeter-totter in relative close-up. So you could see very clearly that there were in fact no wires. Walt did these little drawings that showed our set, first of all in its standard setting, just realistically, and then on its side, with the roof on its side, and then with the ceiling upside down, and then within a small truncated portion of ceiling at ground level. And that was entirely to achieve this floating quality so that the audience wouldn't catch on how it was being done.
The techniques used in Mary Poppins are techniques that are really common and familiar to filmmakers today in the first part of this millennium. Things like puppeteering and animatronics. And if you look at a modern movie, they are full of those things. And here, Walt Disney and his studio were doing those things 40 years ago. It was astonishing, I think, to probably watch this movie and see the way the characters defied gravity, the way that, Dick Van Dyke pulled up his pants and slid across the floor like an animated character as though there were no physical forces acting on him at all.
There were a lot of special effects in Poppins, and I think that it was a great lesson in discipline for me, because who knew how to make a film? I certainly didn't. And Robert Stevenson, our director, was so kind and patient with me, because I had no idea what long shots and medium shots and close-ups and things like that meant.
Of all the wonderful things that Walt was coming up with for this movie, one of the greatest moments in my songwriting career was we had finished this song, Jolly Holiday, and we were playing it for the first time for Walt, and Don DeGrady had developed a bunch of beautiful sketches for this thing. And there's a section in the song where 4 waiters were going to come out, and Walt said, hold it.
And he said, waiters have always reminded me of penguins. So they made them penguins. That would have never occurred to any human being except Walt Disney. He had this wonderful, whimsical way about him.
Walt said, as a matter of fact, we'll animate everything in that sequence except for the principal characters. We can do that. We have this sodium vapor process that Ub Iwerks has created.
Animation and live action together is as old as the film industry itself. The Disney Brothers studio, when they first started out, made a Alice series, and you would go with a live action Alice into this wonderful animated kind of series of events and episodes. And so the very kind of essence and beginnings of Disney Studio were using that technique, which we later saw hit its stride in a movie like Mary Poppins.
The animation scenes were extremely difficult, but it was a challenge that I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved every minute of it, working with the animators, because one of my great loves is mime. I love to do mime. I started out kind of as a mime. So I was working with these characters who weren't there. which is a dream for a mime. And so they found me easy to work with for that reason.
We had the horses to react to and the geese and then that little sly fox sitting next to us. But in actual fact, it was just a cardboard cutout with a crew member sort of moving it around, trying to make us excited. And I couldn't conceive of what they meant that there was going to be animation put in afterwards. So Walt and obviously that fantastic director, Robert Stevenson, he just made it so exciting to come to work and to keep, especially two little bratty kids, completely occupied.
It's just absolutely fantastic, needless to say, because you had a really top animators. Frank Thomas, for example, who was responsible for the dance sequence with the penguins, and Dick Van Dyke. It is just hard to imagine for a live-action director what the animator is going to be up against later on. You can talk about it with the animator, but how you frame something and how you go about it later on in the animation is something only the animator knows.
Bob Stevenson, who's doing the live action, had been told, don't worry about the animation, you just get your part as good as you can. So when I'd get over on the stage, I'd say, where am I going to put my penguins? But as I'd get the film of Dick actually doing the dance, here's his feet flying all around, he's stepping on my penguins. How are you going to know ahead of time where he's going to be and where Dick Van Dyke's going to be? So I was losing more penguins every day. I had them duck, and I had them jump, and I had them get out of the way any way they could.
And it's so entertaining. The solutions that Frank found are just ingenious. I was one of the 4 supervising animators on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When I look at Frank Thomas's penguins, I thought, okay, we went technically further and we added highlights and shadows onto our characters, which you don't have in Mary Poppins, but look at the performance and look at the charm, and then I become very, very humble again.
When Mary holds your hand, you feel so grand, your heart starts beating like...
It was a high point of my life when I saw that finally put together with the real animation in there. What a masterful job it was.
Walt took all of his little bag of tricks that he developed over 35 years and put them into this picture.
I don't know how they did this, but they surprised us more often than not on the movie Mary Poppins with what was coming up. We had no idea in the spoonful of sugar segment that this medicine was going to come out 2 colors. We were completely stunned. Mary Poppins has this carpet bag. We didn't know she was going to pull all this stuff out of it. We were told to react to what she was taking out of the carpet bag. All of the things that she pulled out of that carpet bag were a complete shock, and they were getting fed from somewhere.
Thing of beauty is a joy forever.
Our reactions were completely genuine. It's what the heck? It was so funny. It was just... It's very exciting. Julie had an animatronic bird on her finger during the sequence, The Spoonful of Sugar.
Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Walt Disney had been experimenting with a concept called audio animatronics. It used robots and automata to create characters, animals and birds that he wanted to put into the theme park in Disneyland.
This is a little robin that we had in Mary Poppins. And this little bird sang a duet with Julie Andrews. Maybe we can get a little response from it. Hello there.
In a most delightful way.
I remember it was so hard for her to keep her hand in a certain position because she had all these wires to make this bird animated in order for this bird to move and to bow its head and wiggle its wings, etc. And she had all these wires going up her arm, which was really quite bizarre looking.
It tested one's patience a lot, and you very quickly realize that everybody's doing a job that's terribly important, and they wouldn't be waiting all that time if it weren't because something needed to be put right.
When we were working on the storyboards, Don DeGrotti said, do you think we could do an effect of climbing smoke?
The black sponge stairs. I don't know how many takes it took to walk up that smoke staircase, because we're following Julie holding broomsticks, walking up this smoke screen staircase, but it was like sinking. It was like standing in a quagmire or quicksand or something. And I think actually I looked thunderstruck.
English artist Peter Ellenshaw was engaged to create 100 evocative matte paintings. He'd worked on Treasure Island and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
I painted a view of the city of London at late afternoon, and behind the glass made little holes in the paint so that we could put lights back of it, and the lights would all come on gradually all over the city, or appear to.
He's a pretty unique man. He had a sense of style and fantasy to his paintings that was extraordinary. If you were to look at a Peter Ellenshaw painting from Mary Poppins, it has an impressionistic quality to it.
Walt Disney was there the whole time on Mary Poppins. We on the top floor knew that we had something really coming along that's going to be great. It was a very exciting film to work on. To be working for Walt was unbelievable, wonderful. You can't give him enough credit for being the great Disney.
He was a hands-on producer in the first sense of the word, and a great leader. He inspired people to reach further than they could reach.
It was the only time I've ever been working on a project where at the end of each day, I walked away saying, this is so good. I knew from the very beginning, after every day shooting, how good that movie was going to be. I never had a moment's doubt about it.
What do I remember about the last day of filming? So many mixed feelings. It was a relief to be going home to my friends and siblings and pets and all of that. But really sad because we've been so close. But the saddest thing was saying goodbye to Walt. It's almost like I knew I wouldn't see him again. He was a great guy, and I loved him very much.
I still cry when I hear Feed the Birds. It's one of the most touching musical sequences in any film. It expresses the ultimate message of Mary Poppins. It's the small things in life that make us happy. And while it's no small thing, the music of Mary Poppins certainly makes us very happy indeed.
How could you not hum the songs? They were so catchy and pretty. They're exactly right for this particular work. I guess it's part of the huge success of the movie.
You mentioned Mary Poppins, and everybody sits up a little bit and says, you were involved in that.
Now we realize how important that was as a film.
Our songwriters, Dick and Bob Sherman.
We asked Walt if we could have a half an hour of his time, and we played a few song ideas we had. He was very impressed with what we were coming up with, and at the end of this meeting, he said, play me that Bird Woman song again.
Come feed the little birds, show them you care.
It was about charity, and about giving somebody something that they didn't ask for, but that they could use. Love.
Please, may we feed the birds?
Waste your money on a lot of ragamuffin birds? Certainly not.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag.
Walt, from the time he heard it, just loved that song. Never said it to us, but he would, like a Friday afternoon, he'd call us up and say, come over, and 5:30, 6 o'clock. We'd come over to his office, and he'd say, play it. And I'd play Feed the Birds and sing it for him.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag.
And he'd, yep, that's what it's all about. Have a good weekend, boys, and then he'd send us home.
He loved that song. It was his favorite.
We got a call from Disney Studios that Mr. Disney would like to talk to us. Dick had been talking to Uncle Walt about doing Mary Poppins, so evidently he went up there and said, I think they would be great for Mary Poppins. He took a chance on us. It was the first film we had ever done. The Sherman Brothers played the score for us before we even started rehearsals. By the time they got to Let's Go Fly a Kite, I was weeping. I was so moved by the music.
In writing these things, we have to credit our inspirations. For example, with the Fidelity Fiduciary Bank.
If you invest your tuppence wisely in the bank.
We wanted to get that kind of oldish feeling into it, and we thought Gilbert and Sullivan would be perfect. So they were our inspiration for joint thumb.
Frugally invested in the... To be specific.
You know, that feels like as if it was always there. It's original, but it sounds like Gilbert and Sullivan, sure.
Welcome to our joyful family of investors.
Give it back!
When we decided, Bob and I, that we were going to do a period piece, we wanted to bring it back to the 1910 era. Personally, I've been a great fan of that wonderful vaudeville sound of the turn of the century England music, the music halls, the vaudevillians. They were just wonderful. It would give it a lot of color. You could believe a nanny would fly out of the air at that period. Then we had to find out what was going on then. And in researching things like Sister Suffragette, for example.
Dauntless crusaders for women's votes.
Well, I was in my element. I loved the number because it was a fun, good acting number, and the actual musical quality of it got you off the ground.
From every corner of the land, womankind arise!
All my godchildren and everything, when they were young, they were all prancing about and striding about singing Sister Suffragette.
So cast off the shackles of yes.
We had a lot of fun. Elsa Lanchester, of course, and Hermione Baddeley, and Rita Shaw.
Well done!
Everybody was so great, and we had such fun.
Well done, Sister Suffragette.
And supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
The musical style was really boiled beef and carrots, an old English folk song.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
And any old iron. It's silly little songs that they wrote in those years, and we wanted to feel like that, and yet be original and totally our own.
The biggest word you ever heard, and this is how it goes. Oh,
my background, my early years were all in music hall and vaudeville. My parents were music hall entertainers. My stepfather sang. My mother played the piano for him. And so I had the opportunity to stand in the wings and watch thousands of wonderful performers, vaudevillians and comedians and acrobats.
I say me special word and then they ask me out to tea.
So when I saw the sort of rum-ti-tum quality of the music and got the feeling of what fun Mary and Bert could have together, it appealed instantly. I kept thinking, yes, I recognize that. Maybe I could bring something to it that would connect. And it certainly connected and resonated with me.
You can say it backwards, which is docious ali expiistic fragicali rupus, but that's going a bit too far, don't you think?
Indubitably. I was worried primarily about the dancing, because as much as I loved dancing, I hadn't done that much of it, or singing. So that was a big challenge for me, but I had such fun. And I've been singing and dancing ever since.
It's just so exciting to see this incredible energy and the sheer joy that everybody had on the set.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I mean, certainly from a little kid's point of view, I thought they were all off their rocket. You know, they'd lost their marbles.
Mark and I did a test in the costumes just so they could see the movement against the sodium. And we thought, well, let's do a fun kind of a walk for them. So when you see that scooping step, we started to do that. And of course, Dick just latched onto it, and Julie did too.
Oh, it's a jolly holiday with Mary.
That was the jolly holiday move that they did when they went on their journey. So I love that step. I said, well, wouldn't it be great if the parasol and the cane did the same dance that Julie and Dick did, follow them? And I said, but that's impossible. And somebody stopped me from the studio and said, never, ever say that anything at Disney is impossible.
One day, Bob and I came into Don DeGratti's office to have a meeting. We were going to play a new number for him. And as we were walking in the room, there was a sketch on his board there of a chimney sweep walking down a lane with his arms slung over his broom handles, whistling. Wow, I mean, it just hit us like a ton of bricks. What an idea for a song.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. Good luck, we're off when I shake hands with you.
We didn't know how we would use it yet. We had not developed Bert totally. He was a screever, a sidewalk artist.
Today I'm a screever, and as you can see,
Walt made that part a composite of several different parts in the book
and it's all me own work from me own memory.
and made him this one jack-of-all-trades guy.
You're filthy.
Oh, perhaps a smudge or two. So happens that today I'm a chimney sweep.
So I had a chance to do a little of everything.
This is the kind of thing that Walt would come up with. He'd be selling hot chestnuts. He'd be being, have you ever seen a one-man band? We said, no, we've never seen a one-man. He said, well, they're great. They do a one-man band. He could be a one-man band. He created Bert right there.
Step in time!
Step in time, step in time. Come on, mighty, step in time.
I played the songs for Mark and Dee Dee, and they were very enthusiastic. They really enjoyed very much what we were doing. And this crazy dance thing, they said, can we develop that? I said, oh, yeah, that's what we want you to do, because we had Step in Time, but it was basically a simple little song.
The Step in Time song was based on Knees Up Mother Brown. It was a classic English folk dance.
And Peter Ellenshaw demonstrated a little bit.
Oh, knees up, Mother Brown, knees up, Mother Brown.
Under the table you must go.
It was fun.
And we just took that and made Step in Time.
Get your knees up. Get your knees up, step in time. Get your knees up, step in time.
Erwin Kostel, the orchestrator, had a great sense of color and feel. And, you know, when you listen to the orchestration of Step in Time and everything, it's just unbelievable sounds that came out of his orchestra. He embraced what you were seeing with sound.
That was about the only thing that was rehearsed for, I would say, 6 weeks, because it was so complicated. But it was amazing. The 6 weeks of rehearsal kind of got me into shape. And once we started shooting, I was ready. And I enjoyed it.
Dick never had any dance training. Can you believe that? I can't believe that. There's a take that Dick jumps off, does a roll, runs up, jumps up to another place, does another back roll, and continues with a dance step that is incredible, that even a dancer would have trouble with.
One afternoon, we were told we have to cut down Step in Time and make it 2 minutes. And Walt said, you know what you want to do with it as far as editing? And I said, yes. And he says, do you have a camera? I said, I have a 16 millimeter. He says, I'll buy the film if you edit the rehearsal pictures. And so he took it and showed it to whoever had said it has to be cut down, and told them that it has to be done just like that. And he says, and I want to add a few things too. I want to make it a little scarier. He wanted them to fall between the buildings. And with Dick going over the edge with a wire, well, it ended up to be 14 minutes long.
What's all this? What's all this?
Including the house, once they were in the house, from beginning to end.
Our dad was a wonderful songwriter. He wrote songs like You Gotta Be a Football Hero and No, No, 1,000 Times No, and Potatoes Are Cheaper, Tomatoes Are Cheaper. He wrote wonderful songs in the 20s and the 30s, and he was our inspiration.
He also had a great hobby. He made kites. We'd go to a butcher shop or some paper, go to the dime store and get some string, and he made beautiful, beautiful flying kites. And that was the inspiration for Let's Go Fly a Kite.
He mended it! However did you manage it?
With tuppence for paper and strings, you can have your own set of wings. With your feet on the ground, you're a bird in flight. With your fist holding tight to the string of your kite.
There's so much in these numbers. There's such a joy. These melodies and lyrics will last forever.
Musicals are such a rare breed, particularly these days. The fact that you can bring music and dance and joy into someone's life is a tremendous thrill for me. The gift that it is to all children, and this was the first time that I was able to do that and realize the value of it.
We knew we had a wonderful movie when Mary Poppins was done. Now it was time for the rest of the world to know. When the film was released, audience response was overwhelming, and it became an instant phenomenon. It was the biggest hit in the history of the studio. Mary Poppins had worked her magic on the world.
Mary Poppins premiered on August 1964 at Grauman's Chinese Cinema on Hollywood Boulevard.
They tell me this could be one of your biggest pictures, Mr. Disney.
Well, we haven't retired yet.
I'm so nervous I'm about to die. It's such an exciting night.
This is the night of all.
The red carpet, they had the big tent out.
Yeah, yeah. And we had a big garden party built out on
the
a
back,
marquee at the back.
And the reaction was wonderful. What an ovation I got at the end.
The reviews were fantastic. I never read reviews like that. They were all glowing, thrilling reviews. It was a remarkable success, a very, very big popular success, which, I mean, that is the greatest thing I think anybody could have, is seeing people enjoying and laughing and crying to your work. It's just the most wonderful thing in the world.
If you were fortunate enough to be a member of Walt Disney's team and be able to follow him as a leader, I think that had to have been tremendously gratifying to work so hard on a movie like Mary Poppins. And it came late in Walt Disney's life. And I think what a great, great reward for that man to have had all the experiences he had and all the ups and downs that one does have in any career, and be able to have something like Mary Poppins to cherish and be rewarded for.
He maintained that it was the child in him, which he never forgot. And he said his child was very much alive. He knew what children would like. He never asked the question, what would parents like for the children to see? That was the main thing. What would kids like to see?
There's magic on screen, off the screen. It was a magical thing to be part of.
For the Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy, the nominees are...
At the Golden Globe Awards in February 1965, Julie Andrews was nominated for Mary Poppins, opposite Audrey Hepburn for My Fair Lady.
And suddenly, I don't know how it came about, maybe Bill Walsh brought it up, but we suddenly realized that if Jack Warner had asked me to do My Fair Lady, which I missed out on, I would never have been able to do Mary Poppins.
The winner is Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins.
Thank you very much for this lovely honor. It's a wonderful memento of a very, very happy time.
And I took an enormous gulp and said,
finally, my thanks to a man who made a wonderful movie and who made all this possible in the first place, Mr. Jack Warner.
Everybody screamed. It was like a thunderous scream, and everybody's laughing.
Including Mr. Warner, so I was home and safe.
And that was her little sweet revenge, I think. It was great.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
When a few weeks later the Academy Award nominations were announced, Mary Poppins received an amazing 13 nominations.
There probably aren't words to describe your emotion.
Now, gentlemen, please. On the contrary, there's a very good word. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
The magic of it had escaped me, pounding it out every day. When it was all put together, there was something else besides what we put into it. I don't know what serendipity came along, but there was a wonderful magic aura about that movie that nobody expected.
But whatever we had on that movie, whatever we forged, there's a kind of innate knowledge that it's always there. We were together, we were side by side making it work, and there's a nice satisfaction to that.
And it's just as I say, every time I see the film, I think it's better and better. And now each generation is going to enjoy it in a different way.
A proper kite needs a proper tail, don't you think?
It was such a contribution to family entertainment, and I know that it's going to be around for a long time. It stands as the perfect Walt Disney movie as far as I'm concerned.
I had the pleasure, the honor really, of being asked to help dedicate the Walt Disney statue at Disneyland. It was his 100th birthday, and so I have to do that, and they said, would you play a couple of songs? And I said, okay. And I played a couple of things, and I said, I'm now going to play Walt Disney's favorite song, and it's just for him. And I sang and played Feed the Birds, Tuppence a Bag. I finished my song, and I blew a kiss to the Walt statue like that. I said, happy birthday, Walt, and I got down. And they told me afterwards, just toward the end, out of the clear blue sky, one bird flew down right over where I was playing and off again into the clouds. Well, that moves me very much. That was Walt saying thanks.